Hello everyone, Akefe Samuel here, and I'm so excited to welcome you into this short but educative class. And I'll be talking about the AWS Identity and Access Management System, also called IAM or IAM. So let's follow through together. In this particular class, we'll be reviewing several definitions and several concepts as relating to the AWS IAM. And as you know, or maybe you don't know, IAM is actually the security resource in the AWS cloud, if I may put it that way. And here is just the outline of the things we are going to be doing as we go through this class. The introduction and definition, what is authentication and authorization, IAM users, IAM roles, IAM policies. If you are new to this concept, don't worry, they will all get easier and understandable as we move on with this class. Alright, so introduction and definition. What is AWS IAM? AWS IAM stands for Identity and Access Management System. I'll break it down for you. Identity and access. Identity verifies if you as a user, you claim to be who you say you are. That is identity. Identity is who are you? It begs that question, who are you? So in the IAM system, you have to answer the question of who you are first. Answer it, who are you? By verifying probably through your passwords, your username, multi-factor authentication. You have to first show that process, who are you? Then you go on to access, identity and access management system. Okay, we have verified you to be who you claim to be. Let's say you have been allowed into um into the system now. What are the places you have access to? Yes, we have given you are legalized, you are permitted to enter this place. But what are the things you're allowed to do within that environment? Alright, so let's go on to the next slide. So authentication is the process of verifying the identity of a user or a system. It ensures the entity claims who he or she claims to be. Let me go again. It ensures that the entity is who he or she claims to be. As I explained earlier, authentication begs the question of who are you? Who are you? And here, it can be achieved through credentials such as usernames, passwords, biometrics, or multi-factor authentication. In the concept of a company, you have an ID card, and if you want to get into the company, like a company I worked in, you stand at the gate. You stand at the gate and you show your badge to show that you are who you say you are. And if they see that you actually have an original identity card and you are a verified staff of the company, they allow you to enter. But that's the process of authentication. Authentication verifies permission before you can enter a place. It begs the question, who are you? Can you enter this place or not? So, and I also gave an example, funny example here. I'm a Nigerian, and when police stop your car, they ask for your papers in order to verify if you are the owner of the car. So they ask for some things, your documents, like, are you really the owner of this car or you stole it? So authentication begs that question of who are you? Who are you? Who are you? Before you can enter this place, who are you? It's as very simple as that. Alright, so let's go on to authorization. Authorization, on the other hand, determines what an authenticated user is allowed to do. Alright, you have been authenticated, you have been allowed into the system, but what are the things you can do? What are the things you are allowed to do? Where are the places you are allowed to go? Where are the places you can't go within this particular place, within this particular organization? What are the things you can't do? This is what authorization determines. Authorization defines the access right and permission, allocates resources or actions within a system. And in the concept of an analogy about the identity card, once you have been allowed into the company, authorization determines the place where you have access to. In the company I worked in earlier, you see on some places you see out of bounds to unauthorized staff. You see it on the wall. That means if you don't have the access right to that place, you are not allowed in. And the company I'm referring to was where I did my internship. I'm a university student and currently in Bells University of Technology, Porta, and I was required to do a 6 month internship, and yeah, that gave me the idea of the company I'm talking about. In case you are wondering, yeah. All right, so Continuation. These two events are very important in maintaining and enabling security, and this is part of the so many responsibilities the identity and access management system of made by AWS can carry out. But I will list out some other concepts peculiar to the AWS identity and access management system. And here we go. All right, users. An IAM user is an entity that you create in your AWS account. I will bring this home. I will bring this very close to you. In my analogy of the company, my analogy of a particular company, every staff that has been given, you've done your interview, you have been given an identity card. Every staff that has been given an identity card is a user, and every staff is striving on the authority that has been given to them from the security department or directly from the owners of the company, if I may put it that way. So if you're a staff, you have been given your probably documents, you have been given your contract agreements, given different things, and most importantly, you have your ID card. Your ID card verifies who you are as a staff, as a user. So every user is somebody that is permitted to use resources within the AWS account. And in the concept of the AWS cloud, you have a root user, and you have the IAM user. So the root user is basically the owner of an AWS account, while the IAM user is a person that has been given authority by the root user. In other words, it is the root user delegating authority to a lower person. For instance, you as probably the president of Nigeria, you have a vice president and you have so many other people under you, and you as the president, you decide on your own that you want to create a system, you want to create an hierarchy where people can directly participate in the administration of the country. People can participate in that, and you delegate, you decide the amount of access, the amount of authority they have. You define, yeah, you have ministers, you have commissioners. These people work within um they work within a an authority that is bound by something. They don't have authority, they don't have as much authority as the president does, but they have authority to whatever the president says they should do. For example, the minister of health, he has access to everything healthcare, but if you find him in petroleum, what does he doesn't have the authority to be controlling petroleum people, in my words, in my explanation. So that's basically how the IAM users work. You have a root user, and it gives authority to an IAM user. Okay, yes, I will give you these permissions, I will give you these things, and you are meant to perform these functions under these policies, basically. All right. So I believe I've done justice to this, but let me read a little bit from here. The IAM user consists of a name and credentials, and from the analogy of the company I explained earlier, the user represents every staff who has been given access to specific sections within the organization as obligated by the duty they perform. The identity card they are given also limits the places they have access to. That was literally what I explained before. And yeah, the finance officer has nothing to do within certain restricted places within the company, else it can threaten his or her stay in the organization. And I just use that as an example. For example, you always find the finance officer in probably um in places where he or she is not to be, like where, like, you don't want to find, why don't you want to find a finance officer? You don't want to find that. Of course, everybody has to do with finances, but you don't want to find that in certain stores, warehouses that he or she is not meant to be, basically. So a user is somebody you create to carry on the authority of a root user, basically. So that's who an IAM user is. And when we talk about IAM roles, these are temporary identity that provides a set of permissions via search policies that a principal, which can be a user, AWS service, or external identity, can assume for a limited time. If I explain this within the concept of the company I explained earlier, where I worked, they give visitors, they give them a visitors pass. And here we used to have vendors with different companies. Different companies come to provide external services to this particular company. And yes, these people need to enter, but before they enter, they need a form of authentication and authorization. And yes, we want to give them authentication and authorization to certain places, but but these people are not going to be here for a long time. So we have to define the time limit of what they're actually supposed to do, or the duty they're supposed to carry out. And when you talk about IAM roles, they are literally temporary identities that provide a set of permissions that a user or a user can assume for a limited time. For example, the visitor is just coming for probably an hour to fix probably just a few devices and some other problems within the company. But yeah, you can't assume that identity for the whole day. Is Once they give him a visitor's pass, he has that obligation to submit it at the end of it. Is just a temporary access. It is go out, come back. The identity card or the visitor's pass they give is just okay, enter, use 2 hours and come out. It is unlike the identity card that gives you a long term, probably has refers to your contract, it gives you a long term access. So the visitor's pass is just way different. So in the concept of AWS cloud, the IAM rules are policies, a set of permissions that, or you can put it as a temporary identity basically, that provides a set of permissions for a particular user to assume for a limited time. So let's say you are a cloud engineer, you want to deploy some things on the AWS cloud of an organization, and your boss sees what you want to do is not something they want you to do for long, it's not somewhere they want you to be for a very long time. Your boss can assign a role and put it under your name. And in that sense, in that sense you you assume that role, you assume that authority to carry out the things you want to carry out for a limited amount of time. And here the highest time duration for a role is 12 hours. 12 hours. All right, so we are approaching the end of our presentation, and the last thing before we end is IAM policies. I want to really say this from my head, but the IAM policies is just like I say is I say it's a constitution. I put it here, it's a silent rule book that determines what's that. It's a silent rule book that determines where the ID card holder can go and what they can do in the company as regards the company. So yeah, an AI policy is a document that defines permissions for users and resources in cloud environments. Okay, so we have been talking about authentication, we have been talking about authorization, we have been talking about a user getting access to different things within the AWS cloud. But what actually determines these permissions are the policies. The policies are just like, as I said, it's just like a rule book. I'm sorry, wait, I can't go back to. I mistakenly went to the next slide. But the policies are just like the constitution. They're like the constitution that determines where a user can go. It determines all the so that place where your rights and your basically what you can do and what you can't do, where it is defined, it is that place that's called IAM policies. Yeah, so IAM policies determines it is where they write those rules that yes, you can access this resource within the AWS cloud. Oh yes, you can't access the resource. So that's the function of IAM policies. And yeah, we've gone a long way. This is about 40 minutes of recording. And yeah, the summary of what we have learned is AWS IAM and its definition, as we said, is identity and access management system. It begs the question, who are you? And it also begs the question, you as an as an authenticated user, what are you allowed to do? What are the things you can do? What are the things you can't do? So it begs this question, and it gave us the rise to several other concepts such as users, such as the roles and the policies. And I'm pretty sure you enjoyed every bit of this presentation, and yeah, here is me saying thank you. Yeah, see me. Here is me saying thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much, AWS, for the opportunity to record this video. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.